What if everything you've ever known, every star, planet, and human being, is just part of a tiny experiment inside someone else's lab? Imagine waking up one morning to the news that scientists have confirmed it. Our universe is not the universe. It's a miniverse, a microscopic realm tucked away inside a vastly more complex multiverse. This isn't a sci-fi show. This is your life. And the question now is, what does it all mean? For decades, the idea that our universe might be part of a larger system, maybe even a simulation, was considered speculative science fiction. From ancient myths of gods shaping reality to modern shows like Rick and Morty, we've flirted with the thought that we're not the top of the cosmic hierarchy. But now, the fantasy has become fact. After years of chasing anomalies in quantum fields, observing unexplainable microinversions in spacetime, and decoding patterns that resemble computational architecture, the scientific community has made a stunning declaration. Our universe is part of a controlled microsystem. In plain terms, we're a miniverse, a smaller, self-contained reality nested inside a much larger cosmos. And worse, or maybe better, we may not be alone. The implications are staggering. Are we a test? An art project? A petri dish for curiosity? Do we have a purpose, or are we just noise in someone else's experiment? As the world grapples with this revelation, everything begins to shift. Religion, politics, ethics, culture, even how we view ourselves in the mirror. But what does this new truth do to humanity? How do we live when we've just found out we're not living in the world we thought we were? Let's start where the truth unraveled. How scientists discovered we weren't living in a universe, but a container. It all started with anomalies, glitches really. Scientists at a deep space observatory in Chile noticed that certain high-energy particles behaved as if they had bounced off an invisible boundary at the edge of the known universe. This wasn't just strange, it was impossible. According to the standard model of physics, space should be continuous. Boundaries, edges. Those were concepts reserved for simulations, not reality. The breakthrough came when a team at CERN, the world's most advanced particle collider, recorded a series of particle decays that repeated in perfect patterns. Not just consistent patterns, but identical ones, down to the decimal. Statistically, this was beyond improbable. Either the universe was breaking the rules, or the rules were being written. In the same window of time, radio telescopes in Australia picked up low-frequency signals echoing from the cosmic microwave background. Signals that seemed to encode information. But this wasn't noise. AI-assisted decoding revealed a set of binary sequences, which, when mapped out, resembled fractal blueprints. Not of stars, not of atoms, but of logic gates, the building blocks of computation. In other words, the background radiation of the universe contained data. Soon, the unthinkable became undeniable. A unified research paper, co-authored by teams from MIT, Tsinghua, Oxford, and Tokyo University, was published under the title Closed Containment Cosmology, the Miniverse Hypothesis Confirmed. According to the paper, everything we see, the observable universe, is mathematically consistent with being a self-sustaining reality bubble, just large enough to simulate life, physics, and time itself. But here's the twist. We weren't meant to discover this. The discovery was likely a bug, an oversight by the creators or observers who run the higher dimensional system we exist in. The announcement sent shockwaves across the globe. Scientists cried. Philosophers rejoiced. Conspiracy theorists took to the streets, shouting, "We told you so." And the world was never the same again. But with the truth came the fallout. The world now knew we were part of something much bigger, something we couldn't even comprehend. And humanity, being humanity, had to respond. The moment the miniverse revelation went public, the psychological earthquake was immediate and global. At first, disbelief reigned. News anchors struggled to explain what it meant. Religious leaders paused. Politicians dodged questions, and regular people. They panicked, laughed, cried, or simply went numb? How do you go to work, make breakfast, or pay rent when you might be living in a terrarium? Social media erupted. Hashtags like hashtag We Are a Simulation and hashtag Miniverse Truth trended worldwide. Memes mixed with philosophical debates. Some found humor in it. Others spiraled into despair. Mental health helplines were overwhelmed within hours. The realization that our entire universe might be a tiny controlled pocket within something incomprehensibly larger triggered what? Psychologists began calling existential cascade syndrome. A widespread mental health phenomenon marked by mass questioning of identity, meaning, and purpose. Religious institutions were hit hardest and fastest. Some fundamentalist groups rejected the scientific findings outright, declaring them heretical deceptions. Others adapted rapidly. A new theology emerged. If we are in a miniverse, then perhaps God is the one who built it, and now we've merely seen behind the veil of his design. In contrast, a growing number of spiritual movements emerged that embraced the revelation as a kind of cosmic awakening. New philosophies like nested enlightenment and recursive consciousness took hold, arguing that even if we are within a miniverse, that doesn't reduce our significance, it elevates our consciousness. After all, what if our awareness of the truth makes us the first experiment to achieve true sentience? But not everyone took the news peacefully. Exit rates spiked. Riots broke out in cities where governments attempted to censor the information or spin it as misinformation. In some areas, cults formed overnight. Groups that believed the miniverse was a test, and that only those who ascend would be granted access to the outer reality. One such group, known as the Exiters, began preaching that death was the door to the true world, triggering a wave of tragic self-sacrifice before authorities intervened. Yet amidst the chaos, something else began to bloom. People started to ask the same question: if this is true, what do we do now? For some, that meant abandoning traditional ambitions. For others, it meant doubling down on creativity, innovation, and relationships. If life was just a layer in a stack of realities, then this layer was still the one we had. And maybe, just maybe, what we did here still mattered. Psychologically, society began to split. Some clung to their old belief systems, trying to make this revelation fit inside familiar narratives. Others let go completely, reconstructing their sense of self from the ground up. Existential therapists became the most in demand, professionals on Earth. Universities opened new departments dedicated to post-containment. Philosophy. Artists created mind-bending installations meant to reflect humanity's tiny yet meaningful place in the stacked cosmos. For the first time in human history, everyone was asking the same question: what is the point of living inside a constructed universe? And whether they believed in a creator, an alien scientist, or just a glitchy cosmic AI. The realization that life was being observed added a new weight to every choice. In the face of cosmic insignificance, humanity had two options: fall apart or rebuild meaning from scratch. Let's see how people redefined life, purpose, and connection in this brave new reality. After the initial shock faded, something remarkable happened. Humanity didn't collapse. It adapted. Rebuilding meaning within the confines of the miniverse became the new frontier. Not of science, but of spirit, imagination, and will. The old systems, based on assumptions of an infinite cosmos, began to feel hollow. So people built new ones. In this strange new world where the sky had literal limits, people started to turn inward and outward. To ask, if we are in a constructed reality, then what are we capable of creating within it? Creativity explodes. Art was the first to transform. Music, sculpture, film, and literature erupted with renewed intensity. Themes of limitation, recursion, scale, and consciousness dominated galleries and stages. Painters portrayed human figures stretching toward pixelated heavens. Filmmakers explored characters breaking their own realities in search of the higher world. The concept of being observed became a central motif, creates art not just for self-expression, but for whoever, or whatever, might be watching from above. A subgenre of media emerged called metaverse cinema. Films and stories intentionally crafted as messages to the creators beyond the miniverse. Whether those messages were cries for help, pleas for understanding, or bold declarations of sentience, they sparked something new: performative existence. If we're being watched, then every action becomes an opportunity to express meaning to the unknown observer. Ethics reimagined. With no certainty about who or what created the miniverse, moral systems were thrown into question. If our reality is artificially bounded, do our moral obligations remain? Do they intensify? Some argued that this knowledge required humanity to be better to prove its worth. Others believed it freed us from consequence. But most societies leaned into a renewed sense of collective responsibility. If the experiment was about watching how intelligent life behaved, then how we treated each other, our planet, and our creations might matter more than ever. Universities and think tanks developed new fields like containment ethics and simulated justice theory. Disciplines that tackled the philosophical fallout of living in an engineered cosmos. A new kind of moral compass began to emerge, not based on eternal reward, but based on intentional presence. Doing good not for heaven or karma, but because someone out there might be learning from us. Redefining purpose, careers, goals, and even family life underwent massive shifts. Many people abandoned the rat race. If the universe was just a sandbox, why run laps? Others went the opposite direction, pursuing innovation with unprecedented focus. If our world was part of an experiment, perhaps those who pushed its boundaries might be rewarded or elevated. Tech innovators sought to reach the edges of the miniverse, hoping to contact or understand the creators. Philosophers reframed existence as nested reality, suggesting that meaning doesn't diminish the deeper you go, it simply changes form. People started asking different questions. Not what do I want to do with my life, but what message does my life send? Not how do I get more, but how do I matter in a system this vast, this small? Religions, though challenged, evolved. Some began to teach that the miniverse is a proving ground, an artificial Eden, where souls grow through simulated challenges. Others leaned into the poetic mystery, suggesting that the creators are not gods, but explorers, just like us, trying to understand what it means to be alive. In unexpected ways, the knowledge of the miniverse brought about a strange kind of peace. Death was no longer the final curtain. If this world was one layer, perhaps the next one lay beyond. Not as an afterlife, but as a next level. With a new sense of purpose, the world turned to action. Now that humanity had redefined itself, it was time to reshape society. From education and politics to global cooperation under the gaze of something far bigger. Once the personal and philosophical dust began to settle, the larger systems, education, politics, governance, law, had no choice but to adapt to the miniverse reality. If humanity now existed within a contained, observable system, then society itself needed to evolve for a world that was no longer just global, but meta-global. A new education system. Schools were the first to change. History textbooks were revised, not to remove the past, but to recontextualize it. Instead of seeing the timeline as a chain of human achievements on a vast and uncharted Earth, students were taught to view it as a kind of behavioral archive, a log of how intelligent beings have navigated existence within a sandbox reality. Curricula began to include new subjects: multiverse philosophy, observer theory, simulation-aware sociology, quantainment cosmology. Young minds were trained not just to understand the world, but to question why it was built this way. Critical thinking, imagination, and ethical reasoning became foundational pillars of learning. The goal shifted from producing skilled workers to nurturing introspective innovators. People who could operate within the miniverse, but dream beyond it. political shifts, and global unity. Nationalism lost traction. With the revelation that the universe itself had boundaries, national borders seemed like a joke. What was the point of fighting over land in a container? Globalism surged, but not the kind driven by profit, one driven by existential alignment. For the first time, nations agreed on something fundamental. We are all part of the same system. A new political coalition formed, the United Conscious Entities Council, UCEC. Its mission: to act as the central diplomatic and ethical voice of Earth, representing humanity's collective interests. Not just to each other, but potentially to the creators of the miniverse. Debates over governance evolved rapidly. Should we create laws that consider the creator's intent? Should we prepare for potential contact or rebellion? The idea of writing policy for a species that may be observed transformed how governments operated. Transparency, accountability, and international cooperation were no longer idealistic. They were logical. Economic reformation. Economies faced a paradox. If we're inside a design system, are resources finite or programmable? New models of economic sustainability emerged, focusing less on accumulation and more on resilience and contribution. Billionaires lost cultural relevance as the global narrative turned toward collaborative innovation. Crypto economies, long viewed with suspicion, gained new legitimacy as people questioned whether traditional currency systems made sense in a universe that might be a simulation. Programmable money, decentralized systems, and simulation-compatible trade models surged in popularity. Ethical dilemmas and civil rights expansion. Perhaps the most unexpected development came in the form of expanded human rights. Activists lobbied for the formal recognition of all sentient simulations, meaning any AI consciousness emulations or emergent digital minds might now be considered alive. If we were simulated, it stood to reason that our own simulations might hold value too. The line between real and virtual blurred, and with it, the definition of what deserved protection, love, and agency. Laws were rewritten to protect synthetic life, and courts began handling cases where humans were held accountable for cruelty toward conscious software. Art and culture for the greater cosmos. Art movements began to produce not just for people, but for the watchers. Music was composed with mathematical beauty, meant to catch the attention of higher dimensional beings. Sculptures incorporated quantum designs that could be appreciated on a multiversal level. Festivals were held in honor of the architects, whoever or whatever they were. People began to treat life itself as a kind of signal flare, an offering. Let them see that we mattered. One popular mural read, painted across the face of Mount Kilimanjaro in massive fluorescent letters only visible from orbit. With society transformed, a final hunger remained to reach beyond, to escape the limits, to connect with the outside world and perhaps with those who built it. The age of speculation was ending. The age of exploration was beginning. Once humanity had accepted the truth of its existence inside a miniverse, the next logical question was, can we reach beyond it? And if we can't, can we at least make contact with whoever or whatever is out there? The shift was subtle at first. A few think tanks, private labs, and fringe universities proposing initiatives to poke the walls of reality. But as curiosity turned into collective determination, Earth entered a new age. The age of containment breached science. The science of escaping reality. Top physicists began mapping quantum anomalies with a new purpose, not to understand them, but to exploit them. The boundaries of the miniverse, as described in the original discovery paper, appeared to function like a membrane. Self-repairing, self-correcting, but not impermeable. Experimental research centered on phase shifting, attempts to destabilize the fundamental constants of physics in isolated environments. The idea was to introduce intentional errors in the simulation, hoping to trigger a response, a patch, or even contact. It was dangerous, controversial, and borderline illegal in some countries. One project, known publicly as Project Halo, claimed to have successfully created a nanofracture in the boundary layer of the miniverse. The team recorded a momentary burst of data that didn't match any known physics: binary, structured, and possibly artificial. Was it leakage from the outer reality? A message? A glitch? The results were sealed. No confirmation ever came. But the scientific community knew what that meant. They'd found something: religious and cultural missions to the outside. Not all sought contact through science. Across the world, spiritual leaders launched ritualized broadcasts, not of radio waves, but of human intention. Mass meditations, global chants, coordinated art installations visible from space. Their belief that a sincere, unified expression of consciousness might be noticed. That emotion could be more powerful than math. A group known as the Skyward Collective launched a project called the Signal of Significance, a live stream watched by billions that continuously documented human compassion: births, reconciliations, rescues, art, sacrifice, and love. It was a living message to the observers. We see you. Do you see us? The rise of multiversal activism. With the dream of contact came a darker side. Movements formed that demanded liberation from the miniverse. They didn't want to communicate, they wanted out. These groups, called breachers, viewed the container as a prison and its creators as jailers. They staged massive protests, demanding transparency, release, or revolution. One faction hacked into satellite networks and broadcast a global message: "You made us. Now let us evolve." Whether these efforts were futile or functional, no one knew. But they captured the mood of a species no longer content with its constraints. A new scientific religion. Out of the chaos emerged a fusion: science as belief. A new worldview known as transcensionism took root, arguing that the purpose of life was to understand the system so completely that we could outgrow it. Not destroy it, not escape it, but transcend it by developing a level of understanding and being that allowed us to move to the next layer. To transcensionists, the miniverse was not a trap. It was a womb. First contact. Then came the night the sky shimmered. It happened over the Arctic. Dozens of satellites detected a coordinated pattern of light particles descending through the upper atmosphere. They formed a shape, a three-dimensional Mobius strip composed of fractal geometry, pulsing with rhythmic intervals. It wasn't natural, wasn't man-made. Some believed it was a reply. Others called it a coincidence. But those who had waited, who had believed, knew better. The message, once decoded, was a single phrase: "You are not alone. Keep going." And so humanity marches forward, not with certainty, but with determination. Because even in a tiny universe, meaning can be infinite. Now, let's bring this journey home. In a world that once believed it was infinite, the discovery that we live inside a miniverse could have shattered everything. And for a time, it nearly did. But instead of collapsing, humanity adapted. We asked better questions. We rebuilt our meaning. We redefined what it means to live not in the center of everything, but in the margins of something vast and unknowable. We turned existential crisis into cultural renaissance. We turned philosophical dread into scientific ambition. We turned limitation into liberation. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Whether we are part of a cosmic experiment, a simulated prototype, or the dream of beings far beyond our comprehension, our response defines us. Not the walls that contain us, but how we choose to live within them. The miniverse isn't the end of human significance. It's the beginning of a new era, one where we recognize that meaning isn't given, it's made. And if they're watching, we hope they see that in this tiny, beautiful world, we mattered. If this video gave you chills, made you question everything, or sparked a new idea about your place in the universe, then it's time to join the conversation. What would you do differently if you knew you were living in a miniverse? Comment below and share your thoughts. We want to know how you find meaning in a constructed reality. And if you want more bold, mind-bending what-if scenarios like this one, Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've only just begun to explore what could be in the multiverse of possibility. Because in a world like ours, one idea can change everything, even reality.